I'm your Hawaiian Superman, honey baby, my honey baby, my honey baby, my honey baby.
Okay, we'll get this going in another minute. We'll start up at 4:35. We appreciate your patience right now. We're just letting the room fill and getting the Facebook Live started and starting the Clubhouse simulcast.
Kendrick, is that a real background or virtual?
It's a real background.
I like that. It's like giving me like chill vibes, like especially with it waving.
Yeah, the virtual background on the desktop, for some reason, it looks weird. So I just kind of bought some curtain stuff.
I like it.
We have a nice comment in the chat saying, I wonder if Kendrick was raiding my closet because I have that same shirt. Okay, well, it is 4:35 and thank you for joining us here at Deliberately Fair Housing. I'm Lisa Dunn, and I am so happy to kick off our 8th deliberate discussion that we have had. And this one is discussing the model minority myth and discussing the diverse communities of the AAPI community and their specific housing needs. But we've got a wonderful group here, and let me just do one thing here to make sure I've got, let's see. Oh, that wasn't what I wanted to do. Let's see, I'm trying to get us off the screen here, but that's always a little fun. My computer's giving me some issues. Anyhow, I'll go ahead and start. I want to introduce our moderator. That would be Jessica Siguenza, and she is a business development executive with Finance of America Mortgage, celebrating her 8th year with Finance of America in April, where she enjoys building relationships with clients and realtors. With a huge heart for philanthropy, I can barely say that, she helped Finance of America open their 501c3 Finance of America Cares in 2017 and serves on the board of directors representing California and Hawaii for the last 4 years. She was the 2020 Orange County YPN chair, and her YPN was awarded the NAR and CAR Network Award of the Year for 2020. Yay! She served on the CAR YPN Advisory Board in 2018 and currently serves on the Orange County Realtors Board of Directors as the Affiliate North Director for her 2nd year. Outside of work, she's an avid Disney fan. She's originally from the Bay Area and spent a few years of her childhood in Guam, which I learned the term, what do you call someone from Guam, Jessica?
Chamorro.
And I've never heard that. I find all of this fascinating. Her favorite title and role in life is that of mommy to her 4-year-old son, Noah. So Jessica, I'll let you take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, and Hafaday, and welcome. In honor of Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, it is my pleasure to introduce to you our amazing panel today. But first, before we dive into their introductions, I wanted to give a special Hafaday to my Nana, Maria Indalacio, who is watching this discussion from Guam. Guam is located in Micronesia.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's the southernmost island within the Mariana Islands, and it's 9:30 a.m. her time there. My Nana is a World War II survivor. She's a mother of 8, grandmother of 22, and great-grandmother to 10. Without her strength, tenacity, and encouragement over the years, I wouldn't be here today to lead this discussion with our AAPI community and supporters. To everyone from Guam tuning into this, welcome. Thank you for being here for your first Deliberately Fair Housing discussion. And a quick intro to our panelists. So Tim Herr is a national speaker who has been actively selling for 14 years since graduating from the Institute of Technology. He's currently the managing broker for 4 Points Honors and Associates, a boutique real estate firm located in Metro Atlanta. Tim serves the real estate community on different capacities, representing all 1.4 million realtors. He was the 2018 National Association of Realtors Chair for Diversity. Did not know that. Very cool. He was on the 2018 NAR Task Force to promote and commemorate the 50th anniversary of fair housing in the United States, and was appointed by the 2013, 2014, and 2015 presidents of the National Association of Realtors to be their representative president liaison for South Korea. He has now been elected as the incoming Asian Real Estate Association of America, ARIA, as we know it in the industry, 2020 national president, with ARIA being the largest AAPI trade association in the United States with 17,000 members and 43 chapters worldwide. Welcome, Tim. Great to meet you.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate everyone, but thank you so much.
Thanks for being here.
Of course.
Our next panelist is Kendrick Kim, realtor and broker since 2018, part of the Orange County Association of Realtors with me, and part-time educator and professor in the California Community College system since 2014. He teaches real estate and entrepreneurial courses. Active in his community, I want to welcome longtime friend Kendrick Kim. Thank you so much. Hey, Kendrick.
Hi.
And our final panelist is Tommy Choi. He co-founded the Weinberg Choi residential team in 2017 with his business partner, Josh Weinberg. They celebrated the opening of their own Keller Williams brokerage in January of 2017. They are consistently ranked in the top 10 real estate teams in Chicago, which puts them in the top 1% of Chicago Association of Realtors top producers. Congratulations on that, Tommy. Tommy also serves as the 135th president of the Chicago Association of Realtors and the first Korean American president in the association's 135-year history. He also serves as an active member of the Illinois Realtors and was chair of the National Association of Realtors YPN Advisory Board. In 2021, he will serve as the vice president of Association Affairs for the National Association of Realtors. Welcome, Tommy.
Thanks for having me, and shout out to Jessica's Nana.
I
Guam.
know.
Yes,
I'm
shout out.
so
Yes.
excited. Yeah, she's had to venture into this Zoom world with everyone during this pandemic. So I'm so happy she's able to sign on. All right. So before we dive into the meat of our discussion, I want to dive a little deeper into our panelists and build in some groundwork for all of you today. So growing up, I oftentimes felt like an outsider. I was born in the Bay Area, moved to Guam when I was 8, came back to the United States when I was 12, and I've never felt American enough for America, never Chamorro enough for Guam. And I grew up in a household with several different families in each room, multi-generational, multi-family, several different family members. And it wasn't until high school did my parents purchase their first home. So to our panel, can you share with the group your favorite family story here in the US or their homeownership journey here in the US? Let's start with Kendrick.
Wow, that's a good question. Well, my mom has been a single mother to me since I was 2. And one of the things that she wanted to do is have a stable home for me. We were tired of, she was very tired of just moving and renting from house to house and literally moving all over Southern California. So she got her real estate license for that, to get a home, because if a friend told her that get real estate, you can make a lot of money and you could take care of your child since, you know, you're a single mom. So she did that. She worked hard and she got the American dream in terms of buying a home. And that was only the purpose because of me. And that was the first time, you know, owning a home and being stable for my mom. And it was something of an accomplishment for her. So I owe everything to who I am because of my mother as a single mom. And, you know, single moms, I have a lot of heart for them because, you know, Asian communities, when it comes to single mother, there's a lot of disruption between that. There's a lot of talking about, oh, a single mom, what happened to the father? Maybe a lot of patriarchy there. It's something that has to be dismantled. So, and she did it with not speaking English very well, and she worked hard to speak English, and never took any government assistance because she did not even know about it. No one told her. She just said, oh, I got to work hard. If I don't have the money to rent or any housing assistance, well, looks like we're packing up and going somewhere else. So she worked hard and got to where she was because of her hard work and for me. So I owe it everything to her.
Oh, she sounds amazing. Thank you for sharing. Tommy, let's jump over to you. Can you share with the group your family story in the US and your home ownership journey?
Yeah, that's a great question. What else, and I feel like Kendrick and Tim and I, we all probably have somewhat similar, paths or even backdrops that we went through, so what I'll touch on is that, I'm first generation here. My parents, along with my grandparents and my dad's side, so two uncles and an aunt, immigrated here to the north side of Chicago in the 70s. And so my grandpa, though, was the first one to come out. And he came out to his sister-in-law, my grandma's sister, married an American soldier during the Korean War. And so she went out to Bolivar, Ohio. And you're probably all like, Bolivar, Ohio? What is it, Bolivar, Ohio? My grandpa said the same thing when he landed there. And he was like, I need to go somewhere else. Because, it's funny, my aunt had asked, or his sister-in-law had asked him when he was coming over from Korea, hey, if there's a way, bring some Napa cabbage, because there was no Napa cabbage at the grocery store to make kimchi. And so he was like, wait, what? Where am I going right now? And so anyway, he landed it's a small farm town in Bolivar, Ohio. And he quickly decided, hey, I need to go to a major city for better opportunity. So he landed in Chicago. And so for him, his journey, a lot of immigrants that emigrate, from a country to here in America, they come for opportunity. But for him, he had a very specific goal, and it revolved around homeownership. He wanted to be able to own his own home. This idea of the white picket fence, right? American dream really struck a chord with him. Paul Newman was his favorite actor, and that's what he thinks of Americana. And so he reminded me at a very, very, very young age about this, right? His chunk of opportunity that he sought out coming here was to own his own home, and not from the standpoint of having a roof over your head, right? The practical sense. It was solely pride, right? He wanted to be able to put his stake in the ground and say that piece of Chicago, that piece of America was his because he worked hard to achieve it. And so at a very young age, because I was born here, he would constantly remind me that. And he showed his pride of this home, which, just like you, Jessica, right? It was me, my parents, my grandparents, my uncles, my aunts, and her husband.
And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way.
No, absolutely.
Right? There's so much there that benefits the family, and I wouldn't have the relationships I have with my cousins if we weren't doors away from each other.
Totally. There's so much gratitude I have from that. But, because of that, he'd always remind me that, home ownership, right? Because I was born here, it's not a right or a guarantee. It's a privilege you have to work hard to achieve, and you work even harder to maintain it. And so I always just thought at a very young age, he was just old and senile, right? Okay, weirdo, why are you telling me this? I don't get it. When I realized that he was planting a seed in me that would end up sprouting way down the line after I was burnt out, first job out of college, corporate world. And that's what literally landed me into the residential real estate space. So that truly is what kind of motivated him to come here. And that first, house that they bought in the city that I, grew up in is still something that I drive by probably once a month to just remind myself of that.
How far they've come. Well, awesome. Tim, same question. Tell us about your family story in the US and your homeownership journey.
Yeah. I was born in Houston. My parents actually they met in Houston. They both long story short, my parents moved to Atlanta because they thought it was Atlantic City, and instead they moved to Atlanta. Um, and I joke around with that, but at the time, Atlantic City was booming, and Atlanta was, kind of the other way around. And Atlanta, being a city that did not have very many Asian Americans at the time, our Asian American growth actually came. You can probably look around right around the Olympics, like '96 Olympics is probably when you saw a lot of the Asian American growth explosion in Atlanta. So we were in Atlanta way before a lot of the Asian Americans came, and so I still in terms of the home ownership part, it's an interesting because we all remember our first home. I still remember that address. Tommy, you say you drive by it all the time. Like it's 5032 Audubon Place. I still know that house. I won't remember the apartments that I've been in. I still don't. I know that we've lived in apartments before we bought our first home, but my parents were very adamant about making sure that we actually, while typically immigrant family, they were never home because they were always out working. But at least for me, I would always have a safe space with my grandmother, or someone who would be able to watch over me at home. And so that was a centerpiece. And my parents also took it from the approach that this is generational wealth, that if you could buy the first home, this is your starter home, then you move up in the world, you buy another, maybe a little more expensive, a little more luxury home, maybe start looking at investment homes. So they always had the real estate component part. I wouldn't say it was ingrained, but it was a very key proponent to where I was growing up. We knew that school systems, that was a very big one for them. We moved when I was in middle school because they wanted to make sure that it wasn't because the house was inadequate. It's because they said, we need to be in a better school system. So stuff like that. So there's a lot of those, intricate details that my parentals actually thought of that as a child, you don't really think about. So that's kind of a little bit my housing mentality, right? So
I think threaded through each of your stories, really hard work and home ownership. And we all know that home ownership builds wealth. So what brought each of you, and I know Tommy, you touched on it, what brought each of you into the real estate world and what you each do today? Tommy, do you want to start? Yeah, Tim, go for it.
Yeah, I'll go for it. You know what? Mine was a fluke. I went to Georgia Tech. I did not want to do engineering anymore. And my parents were like, absolutely not. You need to do something with your life. Why don't you go get your real estate license in the meantime? So that was our little happy compromise. It actually ended up doing very well because I was actually one of the few bilingual agents, and I was young. I was hungry for the business after college. And I could speak English, I could speak Korean, so I could could work with both languages, both cultures, and it just became a good career out of it. And I owe my life to real estate. This has been my bread and butter, and I think this is how we give back. Now, 15 years later, we help mentor our next generation of kids and real estate practitioners and realtors. So that's how I got started in real estate.
Awesome. And so valuable to have both those languages now with how the world is. Tommy, what about you?
So, I mentioned that I was burnt out, in my first corporate job out of college. I was working at a IT sales company here in Chicago, and I was making 130 cold calls a day to state and local government IT directors. No offense to any IT director in the audience, but you can imagine how lively those conversations were. So that kind of put a burnt out on me. But it's interesting because the day before I went to college, Bradley University, which is in like the heart of Illinois, my dad had sent me down to have this expectations talk with me. And it's interesting because my parents are very, traditional yet non-traditional when it came to the way that a lot of my other Korean friends, especially first generation Korean friends had grown up. The emphasis on education was there. However, when it came to college, my dad was very adamant because everyone in my family are small business owners. And, he said, listen, I don't expect you to learn anything out of a textbook or in a classroom for the next 4 years. why your mom and I worked our butts off to pay for your college education you're about to go on is because we want you to understand and figure out how to build relationships with people. And it was very interesting because it was opposite of what they were telling me prior to that point, right? You know, my dad was like, if I wanted you to learn something, I would save myself these 6 figures that we're about to invest into this and just say, go to work for yourself, just like we all did, right? And what he wanted me to do, he pointed out, you're going to this place called Peoria, Illinois, where, you know, some kids grew up on a farm, international students are leaving their country to come get the best education they can. You're going to meet people that have never met an Asian person, let alone a Korean person, ever in their lives. And half of those people are going to really embrace that, come from a place of curiosity, ask questions to learn about you. You're going to want to learn about them. Then there's going to be another half of people who don't want anything to do with you and are turned off by the differences that you bring to the table. He really empowered me. He said, in 4 years, what I need you to figure out is how to become friends with both sides of the fence.
Wow.
And so I didn't really understand. Once again, I'm 17 years old. Like, what the hell are you talking about? I'm going to go to school. I'm going to do great. I'm going to get this awesome, you know, corporate gig, right? Whatever. And it wasn't until I hit that burnout. And what that burnout was, my definition of success when I was in my young 20s, right? Post-college was financial. I thought the amount that was on my W-2 defined what success was. And, you know, I was doing well at the age of 24, making like a 6-figure income, bought a condo, right? I thought it was cool. I was driving a 3 Series BMW, but I was miserable. The first thought I thought of every morning was how many days away until Friday. And so at that moment in my life that I'm so grateful for, all these weird conversations with my dad about building relationships, focusing on them, I did them, right? He planted a seed in me. I was doing that. And then my grandpa's weird stories growing up about home ownership, that started to sprout in my head. So when I was at that, you know, fork in the road, that's when I said, hey, I need to make a change and I need to figure out my definition of success, then switch to happiness. What was going to make me happy? And it was based on relationship. People are always like, real estate made you happy? How did you know that? Real estate doesn't make me happy. What our industry is a platform, right? It's a stage that we get to stand on. And when we're on stage, for me, what I get to perform for my audience is cultivating and curating relationships. What my dad empowered me to do, right? No matter where we are, seeing eye to eye on ideology and beliefs, right? Getting together, figuring out ways I can solve problems so they can solve my problems. So that's how, like, all this, it was this, like, you know, movie montage flashback moment in my life of all these moments that added up to this and then pointed to residential real estate.
I'm going to send Noah, my son, out to your house so your dad can just, you know, plant these seeds in him as well. Kendrick, what about you? How did you get into real estate? What brought you here?
I saw my mom do real estate and I thought she was successful at it. And she was doing commercial, residential, and she was making a lot of money. And I kind of fell into it because my mother basically said, you're not doing anything, you're going to school, you're graduating, you're with all these degrees, and you're just not focusing on work. So why don't you come with me into real estate, get your real estate license? So I was kind of spoiled because my mom made it and we had all these opportunities and privilege that my mom gave me with finances and you know, paid off my car, paid off everything, and I didn't have to work. And now she's saying, well, you're going to have to work because you're just sitting home watching General Hospital. So get off your butt. So I did that. And I didn't know what I was doing except getting the license. And I just kind of went with it. And I kind of shadowed her a little bit. And I said, well, I'm going to start my own company because, you know, we could be a mother and son business and a broker. And I got my broker's license in 2008. And I remember my mother told me, why don't you work for other brokerage and see how they run it? And I had a very bad experience at this one brokerage in Orange County. You know, I was the token Asian person there. So any Asian client that came in, and this was during 2009 and 10, where people were doing short sales, I was the guy to go to that said, hey, they're Asian. Why don't you go talk to them? And I was kind of like looking at them that maybe they're clowning me. Maybe this is a joke. And no, they were serious. The broker was actually serious. Oh, talk to them. And I tried to speak in Korean with my broken Korean, which I was learning over time. And they happened to be Chinese. And I was like, I can't speak to you in Chinese, so let me try English. So I spoke to them in English, and they understood English very well. It's just that the broker and other colleagues over there at that brokerage didn't want to take the time to speak to them, and because they understood. It was almost like an insult to the clients that were Asian. Like bringing in a Korean person to speak to a Chinese or a Vietnamese, like I'm the all token Asian that could do everything. That pissed me off. And I said, I'm gonna start my own brokerage, which without even research or thinking about what a brokerage would look like. So I just thought, well, my mom's been doing it, so I'll just let her help me run it. And that was kind of like a mistake because I didn't understand anything and my mom was frustrated. And I just said, okay, I guess we'll start off slow. And I kept it with her. And then when she retired this year, and a lot of my family members and other people that retired this year, right before the pandemic hit, I just became a person of one. So I've been doing it part-time and more focusing on my teaching side because I've been teaching at multiple areas of colleges.
And
But,
you do a ton to feed back into just the younger youth around
Yeah,
real estate and everything like
yeah.
that
I
now.
like to see younger youth connect with other realtors that are not just in Southern California or California. I kind of connect them to people outside of California as well. I kind of still have my ARIA list and my NAREB list of folks that I remember from back in, I think the last time was 2018, where I attended an event and just keep networking and stuff. But, you know, Tim and Tommy had great points in terms of like, you know, we education is important to our family and trying to get the value of it. But at the same time, we got to use that privilege that we have from our families to kind of give back. And that was something important. I think not just through our education, but to the community. And real estate is a platform to help others, right? Not just to make money. And if you have that ideology of making money while helping people, I think that's a great combination. My mother always told me, don't see customers or people as a dollar sign, because when you do, you're not gonna have that relationship as Tommy was talking about. Because are you seeing them as a dollar sign, then you're not wanting to get to know them or have some meaningful relationship with them. So,
You know, I love that you brought that up, Kendrick, because you know it's so true. You know, I mentioned like when it came to college, how my parents kind of were like, like, hey, I don't care about the textbook and the grades now. Like it's about experiences and relationships. You have to understand, like my dad, he came over when he immigrated to this country. He had degrees as a mechanical engineer.
yeah.
That's what he did in the army for 4 years. I mean, he knew his shit. But when he came over, none of those degrees translated. And so he became a laborer. He would work jobs on construction sites until he retired as a welder, and he would end up creating new efficiencies that would create like profit for the company. And he kind of that put a little bit of taint on what education was for him, right? Because he had devoted his time and whatnot, and it didn't matter when he came here. So I kind of had that look at it. And then same thing, right? When it kind of came to finances. So my mom owned a dry cleaner. She's retired now for 40 years in Boys Town, which is, anyone that knows Chicago, is just outside of Wrigley Field. And that area was, I mean, it was a shanty town back, in the 70s and 80s. It's funny because all these people that they come to, Chicago, like, hey, I want to go to a Cubs game. And it's funny because like in the 80s and early 90s, the corner of Clark and Addison, where Wrigley Field's marquee is, you were only there for two reasons: either going to a Cubs game or you're trying to buy crack. My dad, though, he saw like, hey, wow, all these white people come to this baseball stadium. The lake is 3 blocks that way, and there's a train that runs right behind the stadium. This probably isn't going to be like this. So he said, I want to buy a building. And he ended up buying a 2-flat in the area. And He went and spoke to 13 bankers, and they all said no. The 14th one said yes. And you know, a lot of it was feedback. Why do you want to buy? That's the ghetto. Like, we're not going to lend you there. Like, there's better places, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, the lesson he taught me that was, he's like, you know, when you see 13 American bankers in nice suits tell you this isn't a good idea, you start to doubt yourself and you start to wonder, maybe I shouldn't do this. But he had to follow through on it because he had borrowed money, done everything he could to put this down payment. And guess what? He did really well with that building, but it stopped him. He stopped buying. And to this day, he refuses to go to a Cubs game with me because he looks around and sees all the bars, all the kids getting drunk, all the high-rise luxury apartments in the area. And he knows, like, I could have owned all this, right? And so what that forced him to do, once again, just like how he was pushing me, hey, education, that's your foot in the door, but like, you got to think outside the box. Relationships, the same thing he instilled in me when it came to finances. He's like, you can't rely on financial institutions. You have to think outside the box. And you see that a lot with Korean small business owners because they can't get SBA loans. So they pull together cash, right? And it's risky because you deal with one person that's shady and they could run away with it, but that's what you have to do, right? Same thing. We talked about multi-generational housing,
Sure.
right? That house that, you know, we had, that stayed in our family for 2 generations because, you know, access to loans and whatnot was not available there.
So great pivot. Let's jump into one of our first. Our first model minority myth that we want to dispel is that the entire AAPI community is wealthy. That's one that's commonly shared. So if we look at statistics, the AAPI homeownership rate looks relatively high. Also, by some measure, the AAPI community has more buying power than other groups. Household income, though, can be deceiving. AAPI income per household can be high. However, what's not often factored in is the number of working adults under one household. So, but we know that the AAPI community is very diverse, and some groups in the AAPI community actually have very low homeownership rates. Can we talk about this? You briefly mentioned pulling together funds to qualify. Tim, I haven't heard from you in a while. Jump in on this.
Sure. So that is the core mission of ARIA, the Asian Real Estate Association. What we do from an NAR standpoint, and you know, we depending on which hat we need to wear, the Realtor Association on a national level does recognize 4 multicultural groups: the NAREP, the Hispanic, NAREP, the Black, Asian ARIA, and now we just have an MOU signed with the Alliance for the LGBT community.
Wow.
It is a core mission of ARIA to enhance homeownerships in the Asian American community. Even within ARIA, we publish something called the State of Asia report, and every single group actually publishes
Great report.
yes, so their equivalent. So the Shiva report, the State of Black Housing in America.
If you have the link and you wouldn't mind leaving it in the chat, that would be amazing for those who want to look at it. Yeah, absolutely.
And what we do is we do talk about the housing, and from ARIA standpoint, we have 26 languages spoken, over 40 cultures represented, even within the ARIA, within the ARIA network. So you can imagine the diversity even within the organization. Now, when we talk about the wealth, because we have to remember, there's Afghanis, there's Indian, it's not just these Asians, there's more than that. You talked about Guam and to the Philippines, we're all Asian American or Asians, and if you're the Asian Americans, right? So there is a very big, I guess when we look at it collectively, it looks like that the Asian American community is doing very well. But like you mentioned, there's all these little small nuances and things that we have to remember. Not all Asians are the same, and culturally we're all very different. And it's very important to acknowledge that. And kudos to, just even talking about this here. It just happens to be that the 3 of us happen to be Korean Americans. I don't think it was by accident. It wasn't intentional, but it was. But it, I guess when we're very vocal in this sphere as well. So ARIA this is what we do. I promise this is what we, and you mentioned the homeownership rate in the Asian American community. Actually, we found that it was actually lower than what we thought. A few years ago, we embarked on a campaign. Tommy, you know Vicky Salvano with it was from Chicago, our president from Chicago, and it was called the No Other campaign. So what we found was homeownership rates were being published, but the Asian American statistic was not. So it would be Black, white, Hispanic, and other. So while the data points were there, everyone had the data, because it's government, you know, printing an extra color and a pie chart costs money. So we have to remember this is the bureaucracy behind it. And so it was, when we made the initial request, it was, well, yes, we have the data, but no, we're not publishing it. So we embarked on a campaign called the No Other campaign, because we did not feel that Asian Americans should be part of the other category. It was very well received. You know, we got a tremendous amount of support from the banking community, from the lending community, from the real estate, from public officials, and it was quickly released, and it was quickly changed that the quarterly homeownership rate now includes Asian Americans. We found that it's actually lower than what we've been publicizing. It's so we need statistics like that to go back to our lender partners, to go back to our lenders, our real estate, you know, practitioners, to say, hey, look, no, we have a need. It is not as high as we thought. We have to have specialized products that cater to the Asian American community, and I think that's what the core of what ARIA's mission is.
Love it.
To add to Tim, you know, Tim, I don't know if you remember, but way back in 2013, when we were working with Ivan about our public policy, we were doing a report of our 3-point plan. And one of the things in that 3-point plan, we did talk a little bit about the model minority myth, but we also asked to desegregate the data, and also for HUD to use different languages that address Asian community, not just the Chinese, Korean, and Japanese language. There's a diverse Asian population that need that translation in their language about HUD, fair housing, and all that stuff. And we went public policy lobbying in May on AAPI a month, and I think we were successful back then, and we kept on, you know, using that report and utilizing the Pew Research site, and ARIA did get a lot of things done, and Tim was very vocal even back then, representing his chapter, and ARIA did, I think they did a very good job, just keep going and going and going from year after year. And I think it's important to desegregate that data, because, you know, Asians are not a monolith, right? And you know, to be honest, to be perfectly frank, if you're racist and you want to be racist, it doesn't matter if you speak English or don't speak English or speak a language that's not Chinese, because what's been going on in 2020, you know, I had a student that said, I told my mom that we shouldn't speak Chinese. And I said, why would you do that? You know, because they're afraid. So I'm thinking in my head, if you're racist, we all look the same to them, right? People have called me Cambodian, Filipino, Samoan, all of that stuff. So it wouldn't matter. But with the data reports that we have, I think we should desegregate the data and make sure everybody understands from a financial institutional level and from our professional level that we got Asians that are desegregated with Southeast Asians like Indians, Bangladesh, Punjabi, and then we got Chinese, Japanese, Filipinos, and even Filipinos and Guams. They have to ask them, are you identifying as Pacific Islander or Asian? You have to make that distinction too, especially on the lending side and real estate side when you're collecting demographics. I think that's also important. Without all that, you know, you're still going to perpetuate that monolith that all Asians are the same. And because of that stereotype and perception we have in our head, and that also includes pop culture, right? Because we see Crazy Rich Asians, the film, then we think all Asians are rich, and it's not true, right? Tommy and Tim and I, we have backgrounds from our family that didn't come from Crazy Rich Asians. Immigrant stories generally are, we come here for a better life, for better opportunities, because the America is where we get that land of opportunity. And it doesn't matter the color of your skin, in theory, right? But in practice, that's not reality. We can make it, but we still don't belong because we're not white. Let's just be real, right? But I think with Tim and Tommy, what they're doing is being vocal and educating the younger generation of professionals and institutions to kind of say, hey, we're not a monolith. Let's change that narrative. And I think we have a long way to go to change that narrative, to kind of have the lending institutions say, okay, we need to make not only programs for Southeast Asians, but even the Koreans too, because Tim and Tommy's right. There's a different way that we collect money to do a business, because from the mainstream financial institutions, sometimes we might not qualify, and we resort to, okay, we'll pull our cash together. And as Tommy said, if someone is shady and runs away with it, that's like a 50-50 risk that we take, right? We either get burned or we take that risk and be successful. So lending institutions maybe could change that, right? Maybe Jessica, your lending institution could be the first to change that, right? I know there's lending institutions that actually offer undocumented loans for people that are undocumented, like DACA, Dreamers. Why can't we do that for Asians that may not have mainstream credit? I think that's something to think about. Be creative, outside the box.
I think that the monolithic part is the biggest thing, because people hear Asians and they think of everyone lumped together. But the facts are, just like Tim and Kendrick says, that one, we're the largest, and I think we're the fastest growing demographics in the country. And two, we also have one of the highest poverty rates. When you look at Asian Americans, the financial insecurity is higher than the white Americans, right? And that's because people group us all together. And same thing and these are all facts, right? We can show receipts for these. When it comes to wealth, we have one of the largest gaps of disparity when it comes to that too. And once again, it's whether it's, I wish, I came from crazy rich Asian wealth, but that's not the fact. And I think that's where pop culture puts everyone together, and that's the stereotype that's put out there for a model minority.
Tim, I'm so happy. Thank you for your work with ARIA. That segues into our next question, which is really a personal story for me that I remember in grade school when we're taking standardized tests. There was no box for me to mark. I was always other, and probably different from this panel. I'm mixed race as well. So even now, even given the boxes and the options now, I have to pick, which half of me is the half that's going to be recorded. So what I want to know is, how could entities that collect demographic data help us understand this better? I mean, I think ARIA did a lot of work within that, just, really diving deep in specific options for people. Anything else to add around that? Tim.
I mean, the reason why the data, we ask for the data and we ask for, what we do is not to, it isn't to make the Asian American community better. It's actually to make sure that our voices are heard, and to make sure that we have correct representation. I think that's the key difference. We're not asking, again, when we found out the Asian American community had lower home ownership rates than what we imagined it to be, we had to quickly change our narrative and say, wow, whoa, the lending institution, the lending world, this is not working. Or, hey, agents, whatever we're doing right now, it isn't working. Or if you do want to work with the community, this is a great opportunity and a great growth model, and this should be a part of your business. So there's ways to structure and kind of build your business around, what's going on, but you have to have a basis. You have to have a baseline first, and you have to know what you're getting yourself into first. And I think that's why we're doing this.
And, without that data, the measurables, how can you allocate resources or know to change the system and create new programming, right? Think about the fact that, Tim leading ARIA and what ARIA has done up until July of 2016, we couldn't, on this US Census, there was nothing to mark to recognize us, right? It was other. So how much of that other, how much missed opportunity resources up until that point, right? That the data is so important, because now we have those measurables to put out why we need certain resources, why, to Kendrick's point, the system has to change when it comes to access to money, right? it's so important that, and it's crazy to me that that was only 5 years ago, but how pivotal that is for not just us, but future generations.
Right. We got a comment in the Zoom chat that from a viewer that said, I was taught to mark Caucasian because East Indian was not a thing back then. And so, yeah, completely. Kendrick,
just,
any
to
last
add
thoughts?
to the comment of the attendee, it's very, I'm 43. I grew up in the 90s. So growing up, some of the demographic, like when I checked my profile of who I am as a, those student standardized tests that I took in elementary and stuff. When I came out of Torrance area, they had Asian, and then that's it. And then when I moved to Cerritos back in '87, they had me as other. They didn't even put Asian there, even though Cerritos at that time in the '80s was a growing Asian population. So I could understand when the comment of East Indian was not even a thing, so you just mark Caucasian, right? So we still need to fight for that because, in the state of Washington, several months back, if you read the news article in a school district in Washington area, the state, they're putting the demographics along with white and Asians as Caucasians. They're just eliminating Asians altogether in the demographic data. So we still need to fight for that even. And it depends on state too. So I think representation matters. And I think what ARIA is doing is important. And I think we need to continue that work, right?
And we get to see a lot within our deeds. So within the real estate world, we've seen discriminatory language written in deeds, specifically around no Asian people can live here. I'm going to share 2 examples of that. And my question to the panel is, what's the impact of seeing this in a transaction, or the potential impact on communities of seeing this language? Here, I'm going to pull one up here. Right down here, that prior to the first day of January 1930, no person of African, Mongolian, or Japanese descent shall be allowed to purchase, own, or lease said property or any part therefor. Oh, just to see it in writing. So what's this impact?
I mean, it's generational wealth lost, right? And that's what like we see with our Black and brown brothers and sisters, right? What they dealt with. But this is it's missed opportunity. And we talk about legacy, right? And especially this concept of an American dream that so many people, immigrants, come to take advantage of, and to not have that opportunity. I mean, it's a ripple effect that's felt, generationally down the line.
I mean, you have to also remember, I mean, how many times do we sell real estate and we really look at the legal description, or we actually look at the deeds, right? Not very many times. So and it's not that long ago women couldn't own real estate without the permission of their fathers or their husbands, right? This is in the 70s. The Chinese Exclusion Act, or the Japanese internment camp. I mean, this is all very recent. I mean, this is all Botox, by the way, you guys. I'm actually a lot older than what everyone thinks. So this is not that long ago where we.
Is this a myth we need to dispel?
But it's not that long ago, you guys. It's we sell it. And we're very careful within the realtor world calling it a celebration of the Fair Housing Act. It's actually a commemoration, right? Because we were in the wrong, right? This is 50 years ago. It's not that long ago, right? So being on the right side of the law and doing the right thing takes courage. It takes time, and from my kind of point of view, and I know that in the realtor world we don't discriminate against LGBT and gender identity and sexual orientation, but that's kind of the next frontier from where I see it. I will be installed as the next openly gay president of ARIA. I'm pretty sure there probably have been gay presidents, or so I have two Emmys, right? And Kendrick, same thing, right? We have not just the Asian thing that we have to worry about. Now we have the the gay thing that we have to worry about too, right? So there's a lot of other things that's going on, and I promise there's a lot of great things that are going on in the world too. But when we see stuff like that in deeds and stuff, painful stuff like that, it does take a breather, takes a pause, and you're like, did this really happen? Wow, this really happened like 50 years ago or 60 years ago. It's not that long.
Mhm.
So,
And that's why it's so important, because I'll be honest with you, right? Just being transparent. A lot of the chatter I hear a lot of times, like, okay, like, we get it, we were on the wrong side, but we had nothing to do with this. At the same time, those people that feel that way, they've also benefited though from not having to do with this, right? So that's why it's so important that we have to constantly talk about this in order to continue to move forward and make sure that we are moving in the right direction.
And you have to, that white fragility that people have, it's not because we want you to have that. It's because we need to heal and talk about it so you won't make that mistake. I don't know if Tim and Tommy has gone through this, but I'm 43 years old and I've heard the same crap growing up as I did in 2020 and as recently as 2 months ago. Am I the Ching Chong virus or the Kung Flu virus? Or, hey, those are just words. Why are you so angry? Or, the fashion trend is now doing the fox eye, where you're doing makeup and eyeliner to make yourself look Asian, cultural appropriation. And then they say, oh, it's just appreciating your culture. We're not trying to be offensive to you. Or, no offense to the white people, but the white savior complex telling me what is and is not Asian enough, that really gets me, right? And, I came out in 2006 privately. I came out in 2020 publicly. The reason why I did that is because, hey, I'm not getting any younger. And what I've seen in 2020 is like everything from my experience from the 80s up to now just coming in 10 times fold. And it made me realize that, well, I don't belong in this country because I'm not white enough, nor I do not belong in the Korean community because I'm not Korean enough. So, F it. I'm just going to come out publicly, and whatever comes out, comes out. And that's the way I decided. I was afraid to do that because I was like, oh, what if someone thinks that way, someone thinks that way. But now I just decided I don't care, because after what I've been through in 2020, personally, on a personal and professional level, and dealing with people that are also in the real estate industry calling me the Kung Flu and Chinese virus, or saying it's a joke, get over it, things like that, I decided, well, I'm not going to care what people think, because obviously the people that I thought were friends or colleagues, this is what they felt about me as an Asian person. So might as well just be open about everything. So
it's a great pause and a great breath, really, just to thank all three of you for living courageously and being who you are. I think that helps others to be courageous in their path and, just really be empowered to live in their truth, just as humans and individuals. And I think, one thing that stands out to me is really, again, back to what Tommy mentioned at the beginning of this chat, is building relationships, building bridges, whether that's across political lines, whether that's across, race lines, all the above will positively benefit all of us in the long term. So, this actually came from the ARIA National Report. And it's a great moment again to shout out ARIA for all their amazing achievements. They shared that over 77% of AAPI families here in the US speak a language other than English in their homes. So how do language barriers affect the fair housing journey of the AAPI community? What would you guys say? Tommy, do you want to start us off with this?
Yeah, I mean, it's, there's the stereotypes kick in a ton, right? When I've been on showings with Asian clients, that, especially Korean clients that are speaking Korean, I've had listing agents that, because in Chicago, we're not a lockbox market. So, listing agents come to show properties too, kind of make side comments to me like, oh, is this cash offer, assuming, right, once again, this monolith of Asians being wealthy and Chinese investors coming and whatnot, you know, those stereotypes just drag things back down, right? And that's like the experiences when especially when there's language barriers that happen, you know, during the showing process.
And this is just one piece of the world, right? We're just talking about housing. I know, Kendrick, you mentioned your mom didn't even know about any type of assistance programs for her. But just to stay specific on housing, how do you think language barriers have affected?
Well, I think for forms to be translated in Korean or in any language that the client would prefer, and if you say, "Oh, I'm sorry, we don't have that language," then, you know, if you're not an expert or professional translator, are you going to risk your license translating forms for the client when you may be wrong? That's a liability, especially here in California. You don't want to do that. So I think we need more translation forms. Like CAR has forms translating certain documents in a language, Spanish, and they had one in Chinese and Korean. But what about the other Asians and other folks that need that translations? One of the example that you mentioned, Tommy, about your clients and they assume that they have cash. Well, in March 2020, before we got into lockdown, I was showing a property in the Orange County area, and you know, the listing agent met us at the property, and I was like, okay, I don't know why you're meeting us at the property. And they had the gall to actually say, "Is your clients from communist China?" And I didn't know what to say to that. And my clients were like, "We speak English, you know, you said that right in front of us." And we did not know what to do. We felt unsafe. And we just decided, well, I guess we're not going to buy this area. And then 3 days later, March 13th happened. Governor Newsom said, "Hey, we're on lockdown, no more going out." And then we didn't know about property showings and how they do the real estate. So I decided, well, until we know for sure, let's just wait on buying a house. And that's what they did. And I just got a call from them and say, "I think we're going to buy again, but I'm kind of still scared because there's so much anti-Asian hate." So if you don't care about Asian folks, and if you're a realtor out there and you care about the money, well, you're going to lose a lot of clients because of your racism or anti-Asian hate. At the very minimum, think of that, right? At the very minimum. But it's a big impact, right? And I'm sure there's going to be new laws and policies from NAR, CAR, and any of your state associations related to a lot of these professionals, or even how to deal with the anti-Asian hate among customers, right? What can you do?
Right.
We know that, you know, the ERLA form, the uniform, the loan application form that we all know, it's the same form. So you know, you would think it's a no-brainer to be able to put this in different languages, to have the form you know, because again, it's a standardized form. There's tweaks every couple of years. ARIA, again, if you've noticed that ARIA we were very policy oriented, so we have a lot of policy issues. We were successful in trying to get what language do you prefer in the early applications, in the loan applications. It did pass, you know, the regulatory hurdles, but it was not ultimately signed in the last administration. And it was actually the Mortgage Bankers Association actually was against it as well as HUD, because they felt that if the entities now have to, if they know what language you speak, then the support has to be there. So you can't just say, "Hey, I need the forms have to be in Spanish," and then there's no support in Spanish. Then there's, you know, the bankers and the lending institutions felt that was going to be a big burden. But again, from our world, you know, we do think that you know, language access and language support is very, very important, especially in the lending world. Again, Tommy, Kendrick, we all said it. There's not a lot of there are people that are very wealthy, but there's not very many people that has $200,000-$300,000 cash to put down to buy a house. We're gonna go get a mortgage. And if we look at, you know, the rates of conventional versus FHA, there is a lack of Asian Americans that doesn't, you know, use FHAs because they don't know about it. It's not a program that is well used. Everyone thinks that you have to put down this 20% and you have to go get this convention, you have to get a certain credit score, you have to be a W-2. But a lot of Asian Americans, tell me your parents were business owners. My parents are business
Cash
owners.
business.
Cash business. So how do you in the bank, and actually the banks that actually cater to the Asian, to the Asian community in my market in Atlanta, they're banking. They do stated income, but it's they require 40% down, but it's a 7-1 arm, and the rates are ridiculous. But it works. They can charge as much as they want, and but they found the niche that is needed in this Asian community, and they're running with it, and it's going right. So it is and I think that's why you're seeing a lot of the major banks like Wells and Chase and Sterling, and depending on where you are, they're definitely making strides into not just the Asian community and the Hispanic community, the Latino communities, and all the different communities of color, because they know that the market is there. They just don't know how to approach it. I think that's going to be very key and pivotal.
And I think within these companies that we work for, within the people that we mentor, really making sure that we look at our AAPI community and bring them into our profession, right? So that we have more voices saying that we need these things. And if you are someone in a leadership role inside of a company like this, for this to be a conversation that you have internally and pushing these initiatives forward to get more translation, to get better support around this language barrier, will positively help this industry as a whole. So we did get a question in our Zoom chat, and it's from Lisa Yee. She's part of the Orange County Realtors, and she wants to know from one of the three of you, is there any call to action items that we can participate in, that she can participate in, anything where we can mobilize, the viewers that are tuning in, whether it's live or those that are on Zoom with us.
I think the action item, in my opinion, and it may not be real estate related, but society related, is the, check out the Stop Asian Hate hashtags, Stop AAPI Hate, and read about what's going on and go through some of the maybe bias training and intervention programs that they offer as free, because I know there are people that care but maybe don't know how to intervene, and you don't have to be confrontational to intervene. There are indirect ways, documenting the issue, speaking up, or diversion, things like that. Learn about those things so you can help not just the AAPI community, anybody that is facing racism or just confrontation, right? I don't know about you guys, but in Southern California, there seems to be a lot of that going on with anti-vaxxers, anti-maskers. If you're Asian or anyone that's not white, it just seems that way. And a lot of the white allies that I know have intervened on communities of color and BIPOC people and say stop, or had documented, because if you're in the situation, you don't have time to document it if you're the one being harassed. I think that's one action item you should do. And then number two is education through the organizations that you're a part of, OCAR, Orange County Association of Realtors, and having these tough discussions about racism, how you can become anti-racist and how you can become understanding of what's going on and talking about it and doing something about it. I think that's important as well. And then lastly, telling your kids and the next generation that, although this is going on, things will get better. We just have to do our part and contribute to better, right? And last point, have meetings like this and talk to each other in the profession, your friends, because I think mental health is very important. And without Jessica and this panel and a lot of people in my life, professionally and personally, I think I would have gone insane with the amount of experience I've had since this COVID-19, and with the amount of hate that I've received that I never thought I would receive, because I thought, well, I already recycled this in the 80s and 90s. I'm sure it's going to go away, right? So having those tough conversations, talking about it, and reaching out to your fellow colleagues and friends and just helping each other educate ourselves, right? I mean, if they don't want to be educated and talk about it, then you can't do nothing, but at least with the people that are willing to learn and listen.
What Kendrick said. Mic drop. It's
Mic drop.
so important to speak up. I think that's the biggest call to action, because right, this model minority misnomer is muted the Asian voice for a while, and you see it especially in the media. You with all the Asian hate that's been happening, and it still continues to happen. It's just not on page one of your news feeds that you're watching. So it's just really important, I think, to continue to speak up, and the educational piece is the foundational piece to be able to have that courage to speak up. So
Yeah, I mean, using your privilege to serve the underserved, right? And using that voice, and even a huge shout out to this Deliberately Fair Housing Facebook group, and those who formed this group, and just even giving us this opportunity to hear AAPI voices in this world, and have this floor to have this discussion. And for it to be archived in their page for people to come back and visit and view at their leisure. And thank you so much to all of you for doing that. Farah or Lisa, were there any questions that came in over Facebook Live? Any questions for this panel from the audience? If you guys wanted to unmute yourself.
I will say one thing. One of the questions that I do get, and May being Asian American Heritage Month, there's been a lot of chatter in the Asian community. One of the questions I always get is, why now? Why is the Asian community coming out with such a big voice now? And Tommy, actually, we discussed it in our last discussion, a little chat when we were invited to speak too. It's not that the Asian community is coming out now. The voices have always been there, and the struggles and the issues have always been there. Mm-hmm. It's just what's happening is that the model, we talked about the model minority myth, and Tommy, we talked about this before too. It's not. It was a way. Asian Americans were always taught to, our parentals were very taught to, keep your head down, don't rock the boat. This is how you advance in society. And the struggles have always been there. It's always been there. I feel for my parents. I feel for Tommy's parents. I feel for Kendrick's parents. Like, it always has been there, right? Like, Jessica, you've traveled the world, right? And you're seeing a lot of just our voices being heard, and we want the opportunity to have our voices just acknowledged, and I think that's the change that you're seeing. It's not that you're hearing it now. It's always been there. I think it's never gone away.
Yeah.
When you say it's always been there, I think of Vincent Chen.
Yeah.
This, which we hardly talked about. Asian community completely mobilized around that whole devastating time. But you're right, Tim. It is, the voices have always been there.
And Jessica, Will Smith said it best. Racism was always there. We're just filming it now with the technology. And as Asian Americans, I'm just gonna say this, and if it offends anybody, I'm sorry, but Black Lives Matter, and not only that, Black communities, especially Black women, have always been the cornerstone of racial justice and supported a lot of the civil rights movement. And it is because of that civil rights movement that Asian Americans in the 60s have started awakening and supporting with the Black Panthers, and also the Brown Panthers too, because they united, and people are afraid of that. And today people talk about Black Lives Matter like it's a bad thing, but back in the 60s, they thought Martin Luther King was a communist and a bad person. Now they think he's a peaceful, wonderful guy. So, it's with time and generations. And I think we need to acknowledge a lot of our anti-Blackness that we have within our own Asian community and within our own Korean community, but also at the same time, we need to work together to strive to change the system. And also in the real estate world, there's a lot of communities that are underserved that we can serve the right way. And at the same time, build that relationship and bridge and have professionalism. We can make money and be decent at the same time.
Janet asked as a question. So she wants to know what's different now. If keeping your head down was what was acceptable, what do you attribute the current wave of activism to?
I think tiredness. I mean, I don't mean to bring it back on me, but I'm tired. I mean, I've been called the chink, gook, using people going like this and singing that. Some of you may not be old enough to remember this, but the Chinese, Japanese, dirty knees song all the time, you know, those things. That's been going on all my life. And, you know, 2020, something just happened where I'm tired of it. You know, I mean, in the past, if you ignore it, people just stopped and leave you alone. But since this pandemic, literally, I was followed around the stores. I was, you know, looked at funny. If I sneezed, they was like, oh my gosh, it's the China virus. Or they would say that out loud in stores. And I don't see any managers at Stater Brothers or anywhere else saying, hey, that's not appropriate. I think you need to leave the store. No, I ended up leaving the store without getting any essentials because no one stopped it. Because they thought, oh, it's an Asian person. There's no racism towards Asian. And going through that few months of 2020, between March and May, it just all rolled up into one. So I could only imagine what Chicago was like and Atlanta was like towards Asian communities, right? And the most recent Atlanta shooting area of the Asian women there, that not only disheartened me, but that even made me more, okay, you know what, I just don't care anymore. I'm gonna not only say something, but I'm gonna step up more. This is not, you can't ignore it, you can't hide it, you can't walk away from it because they'll just follow you around, as what happened to me.
I also think on top of that, right, I agree, it's exhausting. And you know, what also I think has changed now is that it's a new generation, right? It was our parents who immigrated here that had to keep their head down and stay quiet and not rock the boat, right? To be able to seek the opportunities they sought. Didn't mean that they didn't see or deal with any racism. They did. They just kind of had to sweep it under the rug, right? And during that time, what I think a lot of people and you know, Black and Brown community can definitely relate with this too, is that especially like Kendrick, Tim, and I, when you're growing up in that you know, immigrant household, we have to do a lot of code shifting, right? In the house, we're Korean. Outside, we're trying to assimilate to white American culture, and you're trying to do whatever you can to find a community and a sense of belonging, right? This idea of inclusion. And so it takes a lot to process. It took me until I was in like college to fully process everything and process my identity. I'll tell you what will really, you know, messes with you is when all my white friends start to ask me about like going to Korean barbecue, right? When I was like embarrassed of that, right? That you got to think about that mental weight, right? We can laugh about this now, but the mental weight of what that is, right? BTS, they're like #1 globally, worldwide charts. It's crazy to think that, right? When you're used to code shifting as a kid. And so now when you start to see even more and more Asian hate to happen, and we can point the finger, right? It was xenophobia that was created, right? In this last 13, 14, 15 months, you know, generationally, we're exhausted. We're exhausted for our ancestors that came before us that had to deal with this, but didn't have the voice. And we have a platform called social media and the internet now, right? So I think all that, you know, and then also the support from our Black and Brown communities as well. And the fact that, you know, as Kendrick said, there's a lot of white fragility, but it's out there now, and we can talk about this now. And I think that also wasn't happening before. So that's what's really happening. We're in this unique time where, yes, we're the most divided I've ever seen, right? Our country, and even in the realtor community, but we can have these conversations now, and we have more voices and more people listening.
Your Korean barbecue comment made me flash back. There was a time in my life when I was much younger where I hated the color of my skin. And I thought I was too dark for, in that time, I had just a lot of Caucasian, friends around me. And it isn't until now, again, I think just growing up, finding your voice, gaining confidence. Am I so thankful that, the sun has kissed my skin? People pay for a tan like this, and really just embracing yourself, your authentic self, however that looks. And that also translates into, having that voice as far as activism goes, and being an adult and being aware that, where you spend your money is important. The things that you support are really important, because those companies should align with, your values and your core and who you are. Tim, jump in on this, please.
Yeah, the other thing that I'm noticing when I'm going to these rallies and these conferences and is, our parentals were so, and Tommy nailed it on the head, Kendrick nailed it on the head. Our parentals are so, they're trying to assimilate and trying to make a living, and I'm now seeing a lot more parents, like our generation, like people who are in their 30s and 40s, who are fighting for their kids now, saying, you know what, I saw my parents, they were the ones suffering. I can't do this to my kid. I want my kids to grow up in an environment and in a peaceful environment where they're accepted. Tommy, me, and Kendrick and Jessica, we're stuck in this weird, the weird year, the weird time, right? But we don't want the same thing for our children. We want to have the same, the same opportunities for our kids. We know a little bit more about, how to assimilate better. But our parentals, they did not have that opportunity. Like, they were working. And I didn't see my dad, because we had a small business, and then he would go to janitorial services at nighttime, and then he would come home at 2 o'clock in the morning, wake up at 5, 6, go to the stores, and then my mother would take care of me. Then I would go to school. So we all have a very similar story. And kudos to our Black friends and our brown friends, because they have gone through this before us, right? They've been there. So there's a lot of I think similarities and a lot of things that we do learn from each other on that part.
100%. Well, on that note, it looks like we've answered all the questions. I want to thank this amazing panel I know the guys on the East Coast, it's late there. Thank you for being here. Thank you to the Deliberately Fair Housing Group for allowing us to have this discussion around Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And we look forward to, please reach out to us. Find us on social media. We look forward to continuing this conversation with all of you, and thank you. Have a great night.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
and
Jessica.
check
You're
out
great.
Deliberately Fair Housing YouTube videos. They have a YouTube channel, Deliberately Fair Housing, so you could subscribe.
Awesome.
And Jessica, thank you so much. You were great.
It was great to get to know you. Never met you. Tommy, I've met you. Kendrick, I see you often. Yeah. I
was surprised. I was like happy when you said Tim was going to be here, because I haven't seen Tim for about 7 years now.
Hey, this is what happens. This is what happens when you live in Georgia, right? I'm in my own bubble.
But yeah, I'm proud of you, Tim. You've gone through a lot through ARIA and through NAR, so that's good. That's good. Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna have to take